How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf, Daf 100 of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, here we kind of talk about evaluating property for a Ksuba and if there is a mistake. So let's see. So we're going to start at the Mishnah on Daf Tzadites Amud Beis at the bottom of the Daf. Shuma dayon shepichasu shtos o sifu shtos michun bottle. So if the judges appraise property and they appraise it by a sixth more or a sixth less, so then so it doesn't work. Right, meaning if they sort of over or under appraised by a sixth, so then it's bottle. That it works even if it's more than a sixth off. It works. Because if it doesn't work, well then what's kind of the sort of special powers of Bezdin, right? Special powers of Bezdin is what they say is done. If they say it, they say it. Even if it's off by a sixth. Aval. But im also igeres bikores beneim. But if they made like a document that they were going to use to kind of, say like, publicly display that they're selling this property, well then afilu machu shave mone b'mosayim u'shave mosayim b'mono michron kaim. Well, in that case, if they put out this like inspection letter and now the public kind of gets involved with it, so then even if it's evaluated publicly at even 100 is evaluated, a property worth 100 is evaluated at 200, or a property worth 200 is evaluated at 100, that would nonetheless work. So what if you have a messenger, right? Because we've seen in over the past few days that if Amone, right, in the past this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah we see, in the previous Mishnah we see that if an Almone is off by even a zuz, right? We said that if she has a property worth 101 zuzes, she sells it for 100 zuzes, so then that's no good. Yet Bezdin, we seem to be saying that they can have, much more leeway, up to a sixth according to the Tanakhama. So, Shaliach, a messenger, is a messenger treated like Bezdin? Is there wiggle room? Or is the Shaliach treated like the Almana, where there's no wiggle room? So Rave Omar Rav Nachman Shaliach Kedayon. So Rave says in the name of Nachman that the Shaliach, the messenger, is treated like the judges. Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna Omar Rav Nachman Ka'amone. So Shmuel Bar Bisna says in the name of Rav Nachman that we treat the Shaliach like a amona, like a widow, and there's no wiggle room. Rava Amar Rav Nachman Shliach Kedayonin. Rava says in the name of Nachman that we treat a messenger like the judges and that there is wiggle room. Madayonin lav l'didu av shliach nami lav l'didu, because after all, the judges aren't appraising for themselves; they're appraising for this woman, for somebody else. So also this messenger is appraising for somebody else. So therefore, we treat the messenger like the judges, and there's wiggle room. Lafuke amona diladido, as opposed to a widow who's evaluating for herself. Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna Omer Rav Nachman Ke'almone, whereas Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna says in the name of Rav Nachman like a widow, Ma'almone Yechido Av Shliach Yochid, just like a widow is single, right? It's just her. So Oichet, the messenger, it's just the messenger. Lafuke Bezdin, to exclude Bezdin, the Rabbim, they knew that they were a bunch of people. V'yochso Shliach Ke'almone. And we say that halachi lemaise looks like there's some conversations happening. So the Rabbim Ninu v'yochso shliach ka'amone, and the halacha is that we treat a messenger like a widow. Now 1 second. Why should this be any different than the following Mishnah, right? Meaning we treat a messenger like a widow and that there's no wiggle room, but what about the Mishnah that we learned yesterday? The Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah, Omer l'shlucho tzei utrom, that a fellow says to a messenger, go and separate truma. Torim kidas balabais. We separate truma, based on how the balabais likes to separate truma. V'menu yodeya, if he doesn't know how the balabais likes to separate truma, daito shel balabais. V'menu yodeya daito shel balabais. Torim b'beinonis. So he just assumes that it's the middle route. Echad mechamishim, which is 1/50th. Piches hasaru hosef hasaru trumoso truma. But if there's wiggle room of up to what? All of a sudden it got super loud. 10 in either direction. So 10 in either direction. So we see that over here by the truma, the messenger has wiggle room. The messenger has wiggle room, but I thought we just said that the messenger is like the amana where there's no wiggle room. So Asam Kevin Dika determine ba'ayin rav, you could determine ba'ayin yofa. Well, since when it comes to truma, look, some people separate more, some people separate less, some people separate a 60th, some people separate a 40th. So so the messenger says, look, I wasn't exactly sure where you fit in on the spectrum, and this is what I thought that you did. But over here, ta'usahu, it's a flat out mistake, right? If the property was misappraised, it's simply a mistake, and therefore there's no wiggle room. Right? They say we don't want you to make a mistake. So therefore, it's like the widow, and there's no wiggle room. Says Rafuna bar Chanina, the name of Nachman, that the halacha is like the chachamim, that the bezdin has up to a 1/6 of wiggle room in either direction. For the Rav Nachman makoyach bezdin yofe. But 1 second, Rav Nachman doesn't hold of the concept of that whatever bezdin says, they say. And because otherwise, what's the point of Bezdin, right? Meaning Reb Shimon ben Gamliel had said that even if Bezdin messes up by more than a 1/6, it's still, we go based on whatever they say, because that's the whole point of them being Bezdin, is that they have special powers, that whatever they say, even if it's a mistake, it works. Rav Nachman, so how come Rav Nachman say that the halacha is like the Chachamim and not like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, right? I.e., that we don't say Makoyach Bezdin Yafe, but V'Omer Rav Nachman and Mashmo, didn't Rav Nachman say the name of Shmo, Yisom Shabo Lachluk B'Nichse Aviyin, that if you have orphans that are coming to divide up their father's estate, Bezdin Mamidin Loin Apotropis, Uvorin Loim Chelek Yafe. So Bezdin appoints representatives for any ketanim, for any minors, to have their best interests in mind, and to make sure that these orphans receive the best thing that they can receive from the estate. And if these orphans, when they become adults, they could then argue and say, look, I didn't get what I wanted. For Rav Nachman Didei Omer was Rav Nachman quoting Shmuel, but Rav Nachman himself says, that no, if they get older, they cannot sort of disagree and push back. Because if you say that when they get older, they can disagree with what the apotropis, the Bezdin appointed apotropis did for them, well then what's the whole point of Bezdin, right? The power of Bezdin is that they can send an apotropis, and whatever the apotropis does is done. So here we see that Rav Nachman is of the opinion of this, right, Makoach Bezdin Yofe, that we have to say that whatever Bezdin does, and that's that. So lo kasha adato adaloto. So it depends. If they made a mistake, so then we won't say Makoach Bezdin Yofe. But if they didn't make a mistake, so then yeah, we'll say Makoach Bezdin Yofe. Right, that you have to rely on Bezdin. But if they didn't make a mistake, if there's no mistake, then what's anybody going to get upset about this? There's no mistakes. Beruchis. No, when it comes to the direction, so when it comes to these orphans that are inheriting the estate, then we have these apotropis people representing them. So what could they get upset about? So even though the apotropis didn't make a mistake, but maybe when they get older, they say, look, I didn't necessarily want the property in that part of the estate. I wanted a different property because I have other properties that are close by, and right, and so there wasn't an objective mistake. It was just more that they kind of disagreed on the details of the division. Okay, fine. Because Rav Dimi came, Amar, he says, Ma'asiv also Rebbe Kedivrei Chachamim. So when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he says that one time Rebbe paskin like the rabbis that if they're off by a shtus, so then it's bottle. The fun of Parta, so Parta says to Rebbe, B'no shel Rebbe Elazar ben Parta, B'no shel Rebbe Parta Agadol. Okay, Imke Makoach Bezdin Yofe. That if you say like the rabbis that if they mess up by a 6, so then it's bottle. So then what's the point of what's the power of Bezdin? The Rebbe is Amaisa, so Rebbe undid his ruling. Rav Dimi Masni Achi, that's how Rav Dimi teaches it, but Rav Safra Masni Achi, but Rav Safra teaches it in the following way: Maise Uvikesh Rebbe Lasos Kedivrei Chacham. There was a story that Rebbe didn't actually do like the rabbis, but he was going to do like the rabbis. So, the phone of Parta, B'nosher Belozim and Parta, but B'nosher Parkato Agadol, Imke Makoch Bezdin Yofe. But one second, if you're going to do that, Rebbe, and say that the evaluation, that the appraisal is bottle, then what's the point of Bezdin? Lo also Rebbe is Amaisa, so Rebbe didn't end up doing like the Chachamim. So Leima Abakum, let's say that the machlokus between Rav Dimi and Rav Safra about did Rebbe actually do like the Chachamim, and then reverse it versus Rebbe was going to do like the Chachamim, but he didn't actually end up doing it. So Marsav Torah B'dvar Mishnah Choser, Marsav Enu Choser. Let's say that according to Rav Dimi, look, if you make a mistake when it comes to a Mishnah, right, that he made a mistake in the Mishnah, so then Choser, he can undo it and go back. And therefore Rav Dimi says, look, Rebbe actually did it like this and then reverted it, whereas Rav Safra says if it holds that if you mess up with something that's explicitly in the Mishnah, you don't go back. And therefore he says that Rebbe didn't do it and then revert it, rather he was going to do it and didn't end up doing it. Lo d'chuli amma, no, everybody holds Tabed var Mishnah, Choser, everybody agrees that if you mess up with something that's in a Mishnah, you would revert. U'marsa v'ochi ava ma'aser, u'marsa v'ochi ava ma'aser, just simply Rav Dimi understood the story that Rebbe actually did it, whereas Rav Safra understood the story that Rebbe actually was going to do it but didn't actually do it. Alright. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, Amalti Tisavino, Achrayis Ayasme. So says Rav Yosef, as we've seen before, that when a widow sells property to a fellow and a fellow purchases it, so then who's right? If a creditor now comes and chops it away from the purchaser, so who can the purchaser go to say, hey, I want my money back? So Achrayis Ayasme, they go to the orphans. The orphans guarantee it. Uvezdin the Zavin Achrayis Ayasme, as well as if the court sells property, the guarantee is upon the orphans as well. Pshita Amana. So Pshita, so this is obvious. Amana lo etztrichale. So yeah, we don't need to teach that when the widow sells property, the orphans guarantee it. Ki etztrichale beidino. But I needed to teach about Bezdin, because Ma'odatem I may have thought, called the Zavin mi beidino adaita the meifak le kalo udezavin kamash malon. I may have thought that, look, if a fellow is purchasing from Bezdin, so they assume that, okay, if it's being sold by Bezdin, people know about it. If there was any issues, it would have been uncovered during the process. So he doesn't necessarily buy it with Achrayis. So Kamash Milan, then no. Even when you buy it from Bezdin, it's still Achrayis, and it's the orphans who are going to guarantee that sale. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel had said that even if Bezdin messes up by a sixth, or by more than a sixth, the appraisal is still valid, because that's the whole power of Bezdin, is that we go based on what they say, even if it is incorrect. And how incorrect can it be? Amar Funa bar Yehuda, Amar of Sheshes ad Palga, up to 50% off. Tanan Amiyachi, we also learn in a verse like this. Amar Shimon Gamliel says, Shimon Gamliel, Bezdin shemachu shavim masayim b'moneh. If Bezdin sold something worth 200 for 100, or shavim moneh b'masayim, or something worth 100 for 200, Michron Kayim, the sale is a sale. Amar Meimar, Mishmid of Yosef, says Meimar the name of Yosef, Bezdin shemachu b'lo achroze, that if Bezdin sells without announcing, without making a public announcement first, Naisu k'mishato b'dvar Mishnah, it's as if they made a mistake with something that's explicitly written in the Mishnayos. V'chozrin, and they go back. Naisu vadeto. What do you mean it's as if they made a mistake in a Dvar Mishnah? They definitely made a mistake in a Dvar Mishnah. The Tananas, we learned in the Mishnah, Shuma Yisomin Shloshim Yom, that the evaluations of the orphans is for a period of 30 days. So we see that they announce it for 30 days. V'shuma hekdish shishim yom. And the valuations for hekdish, when they're appraising property of hekdish, that's 60 days. And they make announcements in the morning and in the evening. If it was from that, I may have thought that is davke, a messenger has this achroza. Bezdin lo, but Bezdin doesn't have announcing. Kamash malon. So we're teaching. So what a Meimar is teaching is that Bezdin also needs to announce. Esvei. 1 second, we have a kasha. Rav Esvei Ravashi la Meimar Ravashi as a kasha to a Meimar Shuma Dayonin, that it says in our Mishnah that if the judges evaluate property, shepachos ushtos or si ushtos, that they under-evaluated by a sixth or over-evaluated by a sixth, michron bottle, it's bottle. Shavu b'shavu michron kaim. But if they did it properly, then it's a good appraisal. It's a valid appraisal. My lav de lo achrus. And must be talking about where they didn't make an announcement first. Lo b'da achrus. No. They made an announcement first. I mean, the sefer b'da achrus have reisha b'da lo achrus. But 1 second, the second part, the last part of the Mishnah is talking about where there was an announcement. The Katani, if it says, the Katani sefer, that it says in the sefer, also igeres bikoris, that if they made this, what was the word of this? Like, how do they define it? What's this thing called? A letter of inspection, which then, becomes a public thing. So then, afilu machru shavim maneh b'masayim, even if they sold something worth 100 zuz for 200 zuz, or shavim masayim b'maneh, or something worth 200 zuz for 100 zuz, michron kaim, it works. So we see that the sefer is talking about where it was public, but the reisha is talking about where it was not public, and we see that it's okay. So why is a Meimar saying that Bezdin needs to announce it? It seems like in the reisha it's talking about where they didn't announce it. So okay, so the reisha is talking about where they didn't announce it. The lo kasha, but it's no problem because kam b'dvarim shemachrizin alein, kam b'dvarim shemachrizin alein. It depends. If it's something that we announce about, so they announce about it. If it's something that we don't announce about it, so they don't announce about it. Ve'elu ein dvarim shemachrizin alein. These are the things that we don't announce about them. Ha'avodim b'mataltim b'ashtaris. Slaves, movable objects, and documents. Avodim time amai. How come by avodim we don't announce? Shema yishmu v'yivruchu. Because maybe they'll hear about it if we announce it publicly and they'll run away. Metatim v'shtaris, and when it comes to movable objects and documents, shema yiganvu, we're concerned that if we announce about them, then people are going to steal them. Alternatively, alternatively, it depends if it's a time when we announce or a time when we don't announce it. What are times that we don't announce? That in our day and say the when it comes to the tax, the king's tax, lemzone, or when it comes to food for like a widow, and for burial, we sell quickly without a public announcement. Alternatively, depends if it's a place, if it's a city where they announce or a city where they don't announce. That says of Nachman, that they wouldn't have these public sales in Ardah. So they thought to say it's because in Ardah they were expert appraisers, and therefore they didn't need it to be a public thing where everybody comes and puts in their 2 cents to make sure that it's an accurate, an open source appraisal. So Amalei Rav Yosef Bar Manyomi Ledidi Mufashli Benida Rav Nachman says Rav Yosef Bar Manyomi that no, I'll tell you really what's going on. How come in Ardah they don't appraise publicly? Because they'll call it the people who are eating up the property of the Yisomim, right? So meaning how come Bezdin is selling these properties? Well, because the father died and he owes people money, and they're gonna make these public appraisals, and people are gonna be looking for bargains, and it's not a very, nebuch, right? The father passed away, the kids now stuck, have this estate that they have to sell off in order to pay for the father's chovis. It's not a nice thing, and whoever ends up buying these properties, they're just going to call you an orphan raider or something. So that's why they didn't do these public sales in Ardah, to avoid sort of those labels that would be applied to the purchasers. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Shmuel Metalton Shal Yisomin Shaman Oson Umochun Oson LaAlter. So says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel that if there's like movable objects of the estate, things like vegetables, things that will go bad, Shaman Oson Umochun Oson LaAlter, so we evaluate them and sell them immediately. Rav Chizda Amar Avimi Mochanos in the Shvakim, whereas Rav Chizda says in the name of Avimi that no, don't sell them immediately. You can wait until to get to the market and then sell it in the market. There's no machlogas of the mikariv shuka adam merachik shuka. It depends. If the market is around the corner, if the market is coming up soon, so wait till the market and sell it there. Maybe you can get a better price. But if it's the market is not coming up soon, so just sell it immediately before it rots. Rav Kana avabiyode shechra jamsharshe barchilki barchilkoi yasmu. So if Kana had in his possession beer of a misharshe barchilkoi, the orphan, shahye ad rigla, and he waited, with the beer until the regel, until the festival. Even though it's going to sort of go a little bit bad, don't worry. When the festival comes and everybody is spending money and stuff, I'll have no issue. Right? People will buy up this beer no matter what, and it'll be fine. That Ravina had in his possession wine to Ravina Zute Yasma, of Ravina Zute, the orphan, Bar Achte, his nephew. Now Ravina also had his own wine. And he was taking his own wine to a place called Sichra. Also, the Kami to Ravashi. So Ravina came to Ravashi. Amalei Maulam Tuye Ba'adon. So Ravina asked Ravashi, can I bring the wine of my nephew, the orphan, together with my wine to sell in Sichra, or do I have to be concerned that the ship might sink and I'll lose the wine of my nephew? He says, you don't have to treat your nephew's wine any different than treating your own wine, and you can take it with you to sell in Sichra. Friends, that was Av Kuf of Masechta Ksubis. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.